Diddy Bread,
What's up?
you know what I don't like?
Lots of things. You're a
Hypocrisy.
curmudgeon. Hypocrisy. Okay.
You know what I did today that didn't make me a hypocrite?
What's that?
Do you remember last week's when I talked about Sperry's?
Yeah, of course I remember. You talk about Sperry every time.
Yes, but what did I say? Where did I say you should wear the Sperry's?
Graduation.
So what did I do today?
Did you attend graduation today?
And I wore my...
Sperry's?
Yes, I did.
Nice.
Now, I suggested doing a dance step.
Did you not do a dance step?
I did not, because there was no...
Michael Blum.
I thought that, like, I didn't graduate. I just attended.
Right.
So I didn't do a dance step.
Okay.
But I did walk around quite a fair amount.
Okay.
And I'm here to report that my back feels okay.
Good. I'm so glad.
The Sperry's serve their purpose.
Well, good. I'm glad
I put
to
the
hear
casual and business casual. That's what I did today.
Did you scope out any other Sperry's? Was anyone else rocking the Sperry's?
I mean, there are other people with boat shoes, but they may have been a little cheap. You know what I mean?
I see.
You know, they got the Perry's or something.
Perry's.
But not your boy. I got the real Sperry's. And if you want some Sperry's, you go to woo-woo-woo-sperry.com.
Why do you...
That's how you. That's phonetic. In case you're not a good speller.
Oh my God.
www.sperry.com.
Did you know that you can just type in Sperry.com? You don't need the W's at all.
Oh, well, that's groundbreaking. No,
That's a game changer.
Yeah, that's right. Cuts off the funny part of my ad, though.
Yeah, we'll leave it for that purpose. Welcome to Explain Yourself, the podcast where anyone can attempt to explain anything. We're back, you guys, with a fresh episode. And we have the lovely, the talented, the amazing Candace Morris here with us. Hi, Candace.
What's up?
Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
We are so happy to have you. And Michael Blum is going to tell us how we landed this incredible talent.
Well, all those things are true about Candace.
Yes.
But one of the adjectives you left out was long-suffering.
Because she has to work with you?
Yeah. Well, not only does she have to work with me, but her suffering really began like a month and a half ago when I moved into the same office.
That's right. I forgot you guys share an office now. Candace, I'm sorry.
It happens.
And I don't have very much to do at work, so that leaves me a lot of time to A, spill things on the floor, like eggs or granola bar parts, and B, to pester Candace. Now, Candace has a lot to do at work, so she's constantly like trying to do real people stuff.
Real people? You mean like grown up, educator type stuff?
Yeah.
Yes.
Like, hey, let's make sure these kids don't fail these classes. But I do none of that.
No, you don't care if the kids fail the classes.
Yeah,
that's their business.
I kind of don't care.
Right.
At this point, like it's the last day, right?
So Ace is like, I got 48 emails to send, and there's 20 minutes till we go home. And I'm like...
And she's having to look at your really messy desk.
My really messy desk.
That I'm not there to clean up anymore.
She does it. I'm telling
you clean his desk? Bless your heart. If you don't, it ain't gonna happen.
I'm telling you, she's long suffering.
Oh, man.
But in the few down moments that we do have, we discuss sort of the dynamics of the workplace.
Yes.
And one of the things we were discussing one day is Ace, besides all of this stuff, is the world's best team player.
I agree.
So she will do anything to help anybody else at work. Without asking,
sometimes to her own detriment.
Yes, to her own detriment.
Yes.
This is true.
So we were talking about why other people aren't good team players.
Yes.
Which we've seen a lot of over my 4 years there. Ace has been there. And then we were talking about your ego, right? This is why you may not be a good team player because you have a big ego. And then Ace left because she had a real meeting to go to. And
right.
I looked at ESPN for 35 minutes. And then she came back and I said, Ace, I think you're a good team player because you're a religious person. And
I said, explain yourself.
Yeah, she was a little bewildered. And I said, well, I mean, I don't attend your church, but I assume you get a lot of the message of take the focus of your day off of yourself.
Right.
And put it on God.
That's right. And others, right? And others. Second greatest commandment, right? Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, and then Ace had to run out to another meeting, and then I looked at bjpenn.com for 35 more minutes.
And you're getting paid to do this job.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm happy for him.
Y'all are so funny. I love it.
And then we had a brief discussion about it. And then when I was like, hey, he's come on the podcast, she was like, well, could we discuss this more?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
That is what this podcast is for.
Yeah.
So my opening question, well, my two things. Thank you for putting up with me for the last 2 months.
Absolutely.
What choice did she have, though, really? You know?
I mean, she could have moved to another office.
That's too much work.
Yeah, I was going to say, you can make her move out of her own office.
Yeah.
That's your ego there, Michael Blum.
The thing is, I don't do any of that stuff intentionally.
No, I know.
I'm just stuffing granola
You're
bars
harmless.
Yeah.
You're just,
Listen,
you're like a koala bear.
I would rather take a granola crumbling office mate over the many other types of office mates.
I was going to say, it could be way worse.
It could be way worse.
It could be way worse. Anyway.
Like a coffee slurping hipster doofus.
Oh, my God. 9 toes?
Yes. most certainly.
Shout out to Nathan Robinson.
89 toes.
All right. Get all Barbara Walters up in here.
So the question, I think the opening question to you, Ace, is then, do you agree with my assessment that this is what makes you a team player, or what one of the things that contributes to making you a good team player? And if you agree, take me through your process of dissolving your ego.
Absolutely. When you posed that idea to me, my mind was a little blown. And I think it's because, I mean, I've been raised in church, in the Christian church, my entire life.
Right.
So this concept of what we would say in church of denying yourself is just imbued into who you are. Like, it's ingrained without you even thinking about it. And so I was always taught to leave places better than you found them, and that it's more important to love than it is to be right. And just like Sarah was talking about, you know, when Jesus left this earth, he gave 2 commandments to his disciples: to love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and your neighbor as yourself. And if we are living like that, truly, if I'm loving my neighbor as I love myself, I mean, I love myself a whole lot. Like, I don't want harm to come to me. I want good things to happen for me. And I mean, that commandment's probably the one that I struggle the most with. But I think probably because it's been so ingrained into who I am my whole life, I do think that it does impact the way that I do my work. And even when there's conflict resolution, I guess pride would say, well, you know what, they did me wrong, and I'm not going to talk to them about it, or, you know, stick it to them, versus, you know what, let's go smooth things over. Let's make this a place of peace. Being able to humble yourself enough to say, I'm sorry, or I'm sorry that I hurt you, or what can we do to work through this? I think that does have something to do with it. And I'm not saying that every person who is, you know, religious is this way.
Right.
And I, a lot of times, have not been that way because I am a human.
Right.
But when you said that, I was like, this is so true. Because I get so frustrated. You know, I can speak specifically in the workspace because it's where we spend most of our hours during the week. How sad is that? And so, you know, you see a lot of this, people leading from their hurt feelings and from their ego, from trying to rescue or save their pride.
And this is where we get bad leadership.
Leading with my insecurity. Or because I'm insecure, I overcompensate in these ways.
Yes.
There's this chart that I've seen. There's 3 circles. The outer circle is what we would call the ego, or in the church we call the flesh. That's our mind, all of that. Our soul would be the next circle, our consciousness, our willpower, and then the spirit. And the spirit would be what is born within you when you make that decision. I don't want to get too far into churchy things, but I think whenever I think about the ego, it's always been in my mind that it's a bad thing because I associate it with the flesh.
Right.
And, you know, a primal instinct that comes with the flesh, the things that we knee-jerk response to. as I'm getting older and understanding more, the ego's not a bad thing, and that it's just a matter of what we do with it and whether we let it control us, and how we let it, if we let it dictate how we respond to people or treat people or even treat ourselves. Yeah. That's my answer to your first question.
I think in today's world that your view of things is very like against the grain, because everywhere else, like sort of in popular media and culture, you get ego, right? And it's encouraged.
Yeah, like take care of yourself first and then you can worry about everything else kind of language.
Or like the most popular people in this country are often giant egomaniacs.
Yeah, I wonder what's attractive about that.
Be elected president if you're a giant egomaniac.
This is true. I do want to mention, because while Candace was talking, I was thinking about like, yes, Candace absolutely has faith. And there's also personality stuff with Candace. And so I wanted to read to you, I mean, she knows this already, but when you took the StrengthsFinder test in, I guess it was 16, the year that I came to Next, 4 of your top 5 strengths were in the relationship building theme. You have adaptability, connectedness, developer, and empathy. And these may have changed since then. Obviously, like it's been 5 years and things sometimes change. And not that I want to put all the eggs into the StrengthsFinder basket, but like the fact that 4 out of 5 were in that relationship building theme. And Jerry is like this too. Jerry has like at least 3 or 4 in relationship building. And I think just based on that, like if you just even didn't talk about the faith aspect, you could say Candace is very concerned with connecting with people and maintaining positive relationships with people. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And so that's going to translate into, I want to serve people and I want to be there for people, which is kind of like a egoless thing, right?
Especially service.
So,
right.
First of all, I'm impressed that you have my scores.
I have everyone.
I don't know if I should be impressed or frightened.
Look at this. This is everyone from that year. I love looking at this.
We're coming for you, Josh.
Yeah, that's right.
Josh is at home pumping his fist and kicking holes in walls.
I honestly would love to have a copy of that.
Sure.
Because yes, I think personality has a lot to do with it. But I'll step back and say, what forms personality?
That's debatable.
Nature versus nurture.
It's both.
And so could part of who I am in regards to my personality be because
your faith? Yes,
faith
absolutely.
And how I was raised and what I was taught.
That was the next thing I was going to say. Your faith has absolutely shaped who you are, and that would affect something like a StrengthsFinder test. Yeah, 100%.
Well, but coming back to the point of personality, some of the people that we may observe who, I don't want to say struggle with the ego.
Well, let's say that. Let's say they have healthy egos.
Yeah, I was going to say unhealthy.
Unhealthy egos. Yeah, okay.
You mean they feed their egos,
right? Yes.
Yeah. Well-fed egos.
Well-fed egos.
They are controlled by it.
Yes.
They are enslaved to it.
Yeah.
That perhaps there's personality that has to go into that as well. I think of someone in particular. That, over the years I've had a difficult time with, because the way that they treat people is so counter to how I would treat people and how I believe people should be treated.
Right.
But that takes me back to, well, what is their background? Were they raised somewhere where they felt very insecure through their childhood? Did they feel like they had to prove themselves over and over again? And now they're trying to,
like a really demanding environment.
Right. And so now they're trying to assert their power or, coerce people's respect.
Yeah. Which never works.
No. But there's always a reason why.
Yeah.
It's not just because, but.
Right. They didn't wake up that morning and say, you know what? I'm going to be a to people today.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so there's personality that feeds into that as well, but also could that be from whatever their history, whatever their story is.
There's got to be insecurity there, right? What do you think, Blum?
Yeah, I think that the other thing I always think about ego at work is what ego does is it really just like in theory, we all work in a place where we have some kind of larger goal. If you work in a school, your goal should be to educate the kids.
Really?
Yes.
What?
This is what I think.
A novel idea.
This is a hot take. Yeah. So everything you do, and not literally everything, like you can stop and go to the bathroom.
Sure. But your work
should be aimed towards that. Ego, to me, is literally the exact opposite of that. You're going, hey, I'm not so concerned with what's best for these kids. I'm really concerned with what's best for me.
For me. Well, and I don't think there's any way of escaping that. And I probably agree a lot with Candace on just what human nature is and how it's the bent of all our hearts to want to elevate the self and to satisfy.
Absolutely.
And that's I think that's our natural tendency, and I think a lot of times it's subconscious. And I think when we find ourselves slipping and doing things at work that are more like, this is for me, we don't even realize that that's really what we're doing. It's not a conscious decision that you make. It's not like, all right, F these kids. Right. It's about me now.
Right.
You're just slipping back into your natural state. And it takes community, and it takes relationships, and it takes, something outside yourself to pull you onto a path of community and larger goal thinking. But what were you going to say?
I was going to say, I wonder, and I don't know, so maybe part of it is kind of like human nature, but I wonder, especially in today's world, if it is largely almost pushed on us from the atmosphere. Everywhere I go and everything I see is some form of, you should be about yourself.
Yeah. I think it's always been that way, though. I don't think there's anything unique about this culture.
I agree with your point, though.
Yeah.
I think from the moment we come out of the womb, it is I need to take care of myself.
Right.
I mean, babies do that. They cry when they need something.
Yes.
And that's evolutionary biology, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And so I think it's innate in all of us to respond in that way. I grew up with the verbiage, deny yourself.
Right.
Those are the words that ring in my head.
Yeah.
Now, people who didn't grow up with that same kind of teaching or mentality may call it, trying to dissolve their ego, or I read somewhere, breaking up with your ego.
Right.
It's the same thing. It comes from a different purpose. I come from it because you're trying to humble yourself, not being humiliated, but coming from a lower place.
Yes.
And being willing to, I'm not too important that I can't take out the trash for that person.
Right.
I'm not too important that I can't, stop and help that one there.
Right. And I love that you brought up humility and tried to define that, because I think this is where we go wrong in popular culture, is that I think there's a reaction to the wrong definition of humility. I think if you define humility as not thinking less of yourself, but thinking of yourself less, which is what C.S. Lewis says about it. It's not thinking less of yourself, it's thinking of yourself less. I think culture reacts to the erroneous way of thinking about humility. So it's like, stop putting yourself down, stop being a doormat for everybody. And I think there's some positive messages in that, right? But you can also deny your impulses that would lead you to do things like, my time is mine, my money is mine. I don't need to help anybody else because that goes against what's best for me.
That's just like when people decide that they want to go volunteer for Habitat for Humanity and build a house.
Sure.
The ego in its raw state would say, why would I go do that when I could go do something else for me that I enjoy more?
Right.
Where there may be some people that totally enjoy doing that and that fills their tank.
Yes.
I'm not saying that that's terrible stuff. That's good stuff and people enjoy it. But yeah, I think that the definition of being humble or coming humble is perceived differently in the world.
Yeah.
And also the word ego. Like I said, growing up, the word ego, I connected with the word flesh, which had almost a negative connotation to it. But in the world, it may be more like confidence. People may equate the word ego with having self-esteem, like you have good self-esteem, or you're a confident person. And I don't necessarily know the answer to that, but I think that's a good question to ask.
I don't know if I've heard it in that context.
What's the difference between someone being egotistical as someone being confident.
Yes.
Because I do think that they're different things.
I think so too.
They may look similar.
I don't know if it's just the circles that I'm in, but I feel like when I hear ego, it's always, and this is like within a church context and then outside of a church context. Because when I hear the word ego, it's usually in the negative sense where it's something that you have to suppress a little bit. What about you, Blum? Have you heard it positively, the word ego?
I think you could use ego to fuel as motivation.
Okay.
Yes.
So I have a really high opinion of myself, and because I have this high opinion of myself, I'm going to prove everybody else wrong.
Right. I see. Yeah.
And in the his first album, Kanye West has a line about this, which I wish I could remember off the top of my head, where he says he uses his ego as fuel to fuel his dream. And I was like, okay.
Yeah. Okay.
That I could see that, especially if I was a high level something.
Yes.
A high level athlete or a high level business person or something. I could see where the ego in that aspect might be useful.
Right.
What I think is you can't get that aspect of it without the other harmful aspects of it.
I think you're right about that. And if the first definition on Google for ego is a person's sense of self-esteem or self-importance. Now, self-esteem has a pretty positive connotation in our current culture. It did not for me in my church culture growing up, and I want to ask you about that in a minute. But self-importance, I think, would be the one that you kind of bristle at a little bit. Like, ew, nobody wants to be self-important, right? Like, you don't want to be around that kind of person.
Right.
But,
Right.
Yeah.
Because I would say that ego is in itself is not a bad thing. It's a matter of what someone does with their ego.
Yeah, you can't escape it. Everyone has an ego,
Right.
right? Everyone has one.
Just like everybody has emotions.
Right, exactly.
Fear is not a bad emotion. It tells us that something's not right.
That's right.
And it's a matter of what we do with
That's
that emotion.
Right.
Yes.
As some loving people have told me many times in my life, as I've started to feel anxiety or panic about something, it's an indicator that something's going on. And
P.S. Shout out to our buddy Nathan and his podcast with Rebecca Heiss about the fearless year. They talk exactly about this. But anyway, go ahead.
No, that was pretty much it. I don't think that the ego is necessarily a bad thing. I think it's a matter of what we do with it, or what we let it do to us.
Right. Which is, I think, where let's say you have really gotten good at getting in tune with, what your impulses are. And maybe you meditate like Blum does, and you're able to identify pretty easily, like, oh, I'm feeling this way right now, and my ego is making me feel like I need to protect this thing or boost this thing, and maybe that's not like 100% valid. Maybe that's not what I need to do right now. But if you didn't have any of that, if you weren't able to think through those things, what does that look like? So what does it look like if you are making the worst possible decisions in terms of your ego?
Been there.
Yeah, right. We've all been there. We've all done this, right?
Right. What it looks like is you make decisions solely based around you.
Right.
And then you lead an unfulfilling life, right? Because you make decisions that benefit you in the short term.
Do you feel like some people who do this would say that their lives are fulfilled? Or do you think it's pretty much inevitable you're not going to be fulfilled doing this?
I think, though, this is one of those things like, I am really focused on X.
Yes.
I get to X, and now all of a sudden, what do I have?
Yeah.
It's not fulfilling anymore.
Right.
Right?
It's never going to be enough. Yeah.
And so then you move on to the next thing, right? So the next thing,
like, I got my yacht.
Right.
I'm good there.
I really want this Lexus. Right?
Yeah.
And then for probably like 2 weeks, the Lexus is really cool.
Right.
And
then it's not.
Well, then it's just your car.
It's just my car that gets me from point A to point B.
Right.
Yep.
So I think that is ultimately the problem with that idea.
So talk to me about self-esteem. I want both y'all's thoughts about this because, like I said, I grew up in a context where self-esteem, in fact, there were books on the shelf in my house about how you should try to fight self-esteem. But I think it was being operationally defined then as this self-importance, like they were equating those terms. So how do you feel about self-esteem, Candace, and how can it be a good thing?
I think it's great.
Yeah.
I think it's good for one to esteem oneself.
In what way?
as being important.
Like I matter. I add value to the world.
Right. I matter. My opinion matters.
Okay.
My life matters. What I'm able to bring to the table matters. I think that it's a good thing. And I don't have any memory of being told or taught that self-esteem was a bad thing.
Okay. That was just my weird church culture.
It could have been.
Sounds like you got the bad end of the stick.
I did.
The word self-importance wasn't really something that I heard much of growing up. Self-esteem, whenever I would hear that, it usually was in the context with, well, they've got low self-esteem.
Right.
And so really it wasn't equated with the flesh or being egotistical. That was a different experience for me.
Okay.
But I think that it's very important.
How do you balance it with the self-denial that you were talking about earlier?
Yeah. That's a great question. I mean, I can only speak for myself.
Sure.
Obviously.
No, that's what this podcast is for. We want you to speak for Candace. Yes.
And because I am human, meaning
yes.
that I'm imperfect, I'm not always going to get it right. And what is right? I guess it just has to be what's right for ourselves.
Sure.
But, I definitely have insecurities. Everybody does.
Sure.
And stepping back and looking at whether I'm having low self-esteem or I'm having like high self-esteem, is there such a thing as too much self-esteem? Probably.
I think that there's like a very minimal boundary into ego there.
Right.
Like when self-esteem gets too high, it just jumps in the river of ego.
Yeah.
I think you are exactly right. I think it's just trying to stay balanced with that.
Yeah.
Getting to a point where I'm able to look in the mirror at myself, my physical body, and tell myself that I'm beautiful. Like, I think that that's a healthy thing.
Yeah.
I don't think that that's arrogant or cocky or egotistical. I think it's healthy to look at myself and say, you're beautiful. And I need that. I need that for my life and how I treat myself and how I treat others. That starts when I'm by myself. The things that I speak to myself. And I've noticed that even some of my self-talk has changed over the past 5 years.
Oh, okay.
I live alone, so I talk to myself a lot.
I don't live alone, and I talk to myself a lot, so it's fine.
They say it's a sign of intelligence.
It is.
I don't know who they are, but apparently Einstein talked to himself a lot. So I'm just saying we're geniuses.
Yes.
No, but I've more in recent years, I'll just randomly say to myself, Candace, you're good.
Okay.
You're a sweet girl. I know I'm a woman, but it's almost like if I had like a child in front of me.
Yes.
And saying those good things.
Well, and I think that's the thing. You are speaking to your almost like a different version of yourself. It's like the confident Candace has to talk the anxious Candace into something.
You're safe.
Right.
You're healthy.
Right.
You're going to be okay. And some people may call that affirmations or manifesting. And, I've been hearing a lot about that.
I'm going to write that down.
Yeah, you can talk to Nathan Robinson about that one too.
Can I?
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
No more Nathan Robinson references on this episode.
And even
taken over.
And even with,
not on my watch.
But even with the word of like manifesting, like go back churchy with it about there being life and death in what we say.
Yeah.
And we can either bless ourselves or curse ourselves. And so I, for many years, would, in essence, curse myself. The negative things that I would speak over myself or the fears that I would have, and I would fuel them. And so trying to be better about speaking things that are true and are lovely and are of good report out loud to myself. That way it becomes part of what's true to me. Like I begin to believe it. And so I think that has impacted my self-esteem and my self-worth, and even to the point of saying goodbye to a really crappy job.
Right.
And I think that was me getting to a point where I'm not being egotistical and like, you know what? I'm too good for this place. But like,
I can't imagine you ever saying such a thing.
But coming to a point where, you know what? I deserve better than this. And there's better for me out there. And by golly, I'm a good employee.
Yes.
And I can add value somewhere because I am valuable. I think that there is a healthy balance in having healthy self-esteem, good self-esteem, and very low self-esteem, which in one regard, being on this end of the spectrum in low self-esteem and then over self-esteem are both kind of ego.
Yes.
Because
I agree
you
with
end
you.
up thinking about yourself a lot.
You're thinking about yourself a lot.
Right.
And that was how
it's
it was
like a
painted.
pendulum.
Yes. I think that's how the self-esteem picture was painted for me growing up, is that the whole argument that low self-esteem was causing a problem, they labeled that, even just the fact that it was called low self-esteem, they called that kind of a misnomer and a fallacy, because if you have low self-esteem, it's probably because you're thinking too much, you're too inside your head, which is ego again, right? So it's almost like, no, you don't have low self-esteem. You actually have high self-esteem, but you just don't have a healthy view of yourself.
Right.
If that makes sense. It's kind of a contradiction, but it's like you're thinking about yourself too much. And in this way, it is the opposite of humility, right? So whether you're thinking about yourself too much in a positive way or a negative way, it's still unhealthy either way, right?
Absolutely. It's like a pendulum,
right? Know? Just like you said, right? So you need to find that healthy balance in the middle.
The middle of the pendulum, though, is self-confidence.
Yeah, and I think with humility, because again, just stop thinking about yourself so much, and the more you do for other people, the less you're thinking about yourself. So you could actually cure your esteem problems with just being more available to other people, I think.
Absolutely. And even coming back to when I was talking about anxiety and having panic attacks, a lot of that was stewing in me thinking about myself a lot.
Right.
A lot about the bad things that were happening to me, the bad things that were going to happen, the fortune telling that would happen in my mind. And really, once I was able to get my mind off of myself, even if it was something as simple as, let me just get out of the apartment.
Yes.
Let me go on a walk. I'm going to go play with my friends' kids for a little while stop thinking about myself and this thing. And whenever I would pull myself from that edge of the pendulum swinging up, it would bring me back to centered.
That's right.
And I'd feel better.
Yeah.
I'd feel better about myself. I'd be like, oh, things aren't as dark and scary as they seem.
That's right.
So, I don't think ego is a bad thing. I think that it's a matter of what we do with it and whether we are enslaved to it.
Yes.
Because it can get really ugly really quick. And we all have our seasons of where we're swinging a little too far to
Absolutely.
right.
Absolutely. And if you don't have people, I think I don't know if this is a rabbit trail or not, but I feel like if you don't have anybody in your life that can help speak truth to you, almost kind of be a mirror for you in a way, then that's something that we should all try to remedy. And, for some people, it's their spouse. For some people, it's a best friend. And some people, it's just like, no, I go to therapy. And I think we kind of all need therapy because, like, my poor husband doesn't often know what to do with what's going on with me. He's not trained professionally, right?
I'm a strong supporter of therapy.
Yes.
I've been going to therapy for over a year now, and it has helped me immensely.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And I'm so glad you're sharing that. I feel like we all need to just help each other destigmatize therapy.
Yes. If you are out there listening to this Explain Yourself podcast, please know that going to counseling does not make you weak. It's actually a very brave and strong thing to do.
Yes.
So if you've ever considered or you're on the fence about it, do it.
Stop listening right now and
push
go.
pause. You can finish this later.
Yeah. And we've been advocating counseling on this show for years.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Years and years.
Yes.
And, if you get to someone and you don't feel like they're the right fit, that's okay. You can find another counselor.
There's others out there. Absolutely.
Don't give up if you don't find the right person.
BetterHelp.com on all the other podcasts I listen to. They advertise this all the time.
But, talking about if people don't have the support systems, or someone who can speak that truth into their life, a lot of times that might look like depression or like the person I was talking about a minute ago who just seems out of control and just unkind and rude and asserting their power. And, that I wonder, and I think about that person, do they have someone in their life that can be that for them?
Yeah.
And also, are they happy? Because to me, it seems like they're probably very unhappy. And this is evidence of that.
Yeah, I think you're right, and it's so cool that that's where your mind goes. I mean, granted, you've worked with this person for a while, but like The fact that you're even willing to say what's going on, like what's brewing in there, you know, we're often not willing to give that kind of grace to people.
Yeah. Well, the thing is we need it.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Just as much as we need to give it, we need it.
Absolutely.
And that comes back to
it's easy to want it, but not to give it. Yeah.
That comes back to the treating your neighbor as you want to be treated.
Absolutely. Golden rule, y'all. It's for real.
Right. Like if I want someone to be gracious and merciful to me, then I need to also practice and work at, because it's not easy sometimes, especially when you're around difficult people.
Yeah. Who have hurt you.
To be gracious and merciful.
Yes.
Or they continue to do it.
Yes.
Yes.
It's very difficult.
Because you want to just quit.
And let me be clear, being gracious and merciful to someone doesn't mean that you're a doormat or you let someone abuse you. That's not
absolutely
what I'm
not.
saying.
You can say no to people. You can put your foot down.
And you need to set healthy boundaries.
Yes.
But really a lot of times what I've learned that when there are people who are treating me poorly like that they do need grace and mercy.
Yeah.
But also I need to be forgiving and not even for their benefit, but for my
yours.
own.
Right.
Because it'll fester and then it's almost like a heavy weight on you.
Yeah.
I know exactly how you feel. And I've dealt with these things poorly in the past. I always regret not showing grace. And every time I do show grace, which is always like kicking and screaming, but I'll do it sometime. Right. But every time I do that, I realize like, oh my gosh, I should have done this so much earlier, because it immediately heals me.
Exactly.
And it doesn't matter what that other person, how they respond to it. Yeah.
Because sometimes our like graciousness and mercifulness is not, or mercy is not going to change that person's behavior.
Right. And don't put that on yourself.
But but I will say, on the days when I let my pride and ego take the reins.
Right.
I had a much worse day,
of course,
because I was butthurt about everything.
That's right. That's right.
And I was just angry at them, and all I wanted to do was complain about it.
Yes.
And it just made their toxicity made my, not just them, but I became toxic.
Exactly.
As well.
Exactly.
I don't want to say that they made me toxic. I made myself toxic because what I did with it.
That's right. It's like it was an infectious thing, but you like went towards it instead of trying to combat it. Yeah.
And as a friend, a nameless friend, says to me often.
Wait, we already know. But anyway.
No, we don't.
And this is from some of his reading, but it's not a tiger. So he says, sometimes it feels like you're being attacked and it's this huge thing.
Oh.
When you're able to step back and look at it from a bird's eye view and breathe. You're like, this thing's not going to kill me.
Right.
This feels very threatening right now, but I'm safe.
Yeah.
I'm okay. If he hears us, he's going to be like, yeah, you're listening to everything I say. No, I'm not. I'm not listening. I am listening to you. But and there have been some days that I've come in to work and the crap is hitting the fan. The ship is sinking. There's a dumpster fire over there. I mean, it's like all hell is breaking loose. And I'm just like, and some of my coworkers are like,
how?
What's like almost like you're annoying.
Right.
Like, why are you this way? I'm like, sometimes you just got to laugh at the silly.
That's right.
And it's not even so much that I'm trying to be funny. It's I am trying to literally not let it take me by the hair and pull me under into it, because my health, my well-being is so very important. That's self-esteem.
Yeah, I think so.
And that I want to guard it.
It's like self-preservation almost.
Yeah, I want to guard that.
Right.
But as we were talking about, being a good team player and how the ego or lack thereof plays into being a team player, I absolutely agree that that has a lot to do with it. Like knowing how to work with people, you have to be able to compromise and yield to one another. And if you are unwilling to yield, it's probably because of some form of out of whack ego.
Absolutely. Not willing to bend. That's absolutely.
And that can change from day to day. Because I know, thank you, by the way, for saying that I'm a great team player, but there have been times that I haven't been.
Right.
It depends on the day. And for the most part, like I want that to be said of me, and that's who that's what I want to be.
Yeah.
But I don't always get that right.
Yeah.
And, knowing that the next day is a fresh start, another chance to try to go to bat with it. But I definitely, you kind of blew my mind when you said that. I do think that a lot of my religious background plays into how I treat other people. And I don't know that necessarily other people are going to be thinking that way, just like you said, because of the world's concept of ego and every man for himself, and I got to end up on top, and
let's put it on social media.
And let's put it on social media. Like, the more notifications you get, the more likable you are. The
more important you are.
The more important you are. Oh man, we get this like fast food ego type thing with social media. This instant gratification, and it feeds the monster.
It's an actual dopamine hit. Like, you get the same thing from social media, like notifications, as you do from like coffee and sugar and drugs, and it's bad.
and it does the opposite. We're talking about over self-esteem. But if
nobody likes my post,
nobody liked my picture that I posted, or I posted a poem that I wrote, and only my mom liked it.
Right.
And you're like, oh,
and I'm devastated.
Nobody likes me. Everybody hates me. I think I'll go eat some worms.
Right.
Now.
My mom used to sing that song. But no, you're right. Oh man.
And I don't know what the solution or the answer is, and I don't want to go stand
put your phone away.
Well, for social media, absolutely. And I've had to curb that myself.
Sure.
Not even necessarily because for me notifications aren't the value thing, but I just couldn't take all the other stuff that was happening.
Oh
anyway,
man, let me tell you what.
That's another conversation.
It's too much. You're right.
But it's not that moving away from social media, it's not that I can stand on the street corner and say, have a healthy ego.
Right.
Everybody, this is important.
Like,
how do you inspire that in other people? And I guess, if you're a leader, how do you lead your people in a way that, and that,
let me tell you,
I leading by example.
By example.
Absolutely.
That's what I was going to say.
People will mirror what they see.
Yeah, absolutely.
And,
do you know, when I left the job that you guys are about to leave, my first question to the place I was going, and I didn't talk to the leaders there, I talked to other people who worked there. And my only question for them was, how humble is your leadership? Because that's what I was looking for. And the more Jerry and I talk and share stories about bosses we've had and leadership teams that we've served with and under, it's like, that's almost the most important thing. Yeah. If you can't be humble, you can know everything. You can be an expert in your field. You can be charismatic,
you can have be well-resourced,
a winning personality. You can be well-resourced. You can be motivational and inspirational. Sure. But I feel like if you're missing humility, then none of that other stuff actually matters, because the moment that you treat someone poorly, that you've lost them. It's hard to win that back.
Absolutely. And I think that's where empathy training maybe comes in, because I've experienced that in my current job. I don't know that I ever learned about empathy in training in my previous workplaces, but I think that's very important, because it kind of puts another word on what we're trying to get at here.
Yeah,
because when you can empathize with someone, you're putting yourself in their shoes, or you're just trying to be considerate of how they feel.
Right.
It's a way of basically addressing the ego.
I agree.
Even if in that moment you think that person's being a little baby about it, you can at least empathize.
Right.
I had a coworker once who was very high strung and would just get very stressed about things, and it would cause a lot of tension in the room. And she wasn't mean. She just the anxiety and her stress level was so high.
Right.
She would just come into the room, and it would set everybody else on edge. And so one morning I came into work, and she greeted me immediately with, and we didn't even know how to, and I was like,
oh boy.
And I just put my hands up towards her, and I was like, whoa. Just give me a second.
Yeah, just got here.
And I'd never done that with her before. But also I was like, just take a breath, just give me a second. And apparently I really hurt her when I did that. she took the way that she received it was different than how I intended it to come across, but her feeling was valid. And so being able to not be, to come into that room and be like, listen, you're acting like a baby. Like, I didn't do anything. You know what I mean? But honestly, because like, I really don't think I crossed the line.
No.
But I had a coworker who was crying and was upset because she felt that I had bullied her in some way. And so it was worth sitting down and talking through it with her within the first 20 minutes of it happening once I found out that she was upset. I mean, I have my own opinion about it. I really don't think that I crossed the line.
You didn't.
But
you didn't.
But it doesn't negate her feelings and how she felt. And so, you know, I didn't come in there and say I was wrong. You know, I was able to come in there and say, I'm sorry that what I did hurt you. I just, can we talk about it? And I think that being willing to have those conversations and to empathize with someone, it can really help, especially with conflict resolution in the workplace. I think teaching empathy and teaching leaders how to be empathetic people and teach their staff how to be empathetic people can save a lot of grief in the workplace, and things that people let fester, and not just workplace, in the church and friend groups, in the family home with parents and kids. I mean, this is across the board because a lot of times people won't address things, especially depending on their personalities.
Yes.
Because you may have, you know, activators that are sitting in the room with me.
What?
You know, I remember one of your strengths.
Yeah, look at you.
I remember you had a lot of red. It was color coordinated. You had a lot of red, right?
I had
yellow. Red and yellow. Red and yellow. Red. Sorry.
Whoa. Did you you sneak in Wiz Khalifa?
Yellow.
Maybe.
I had, no, activator is green. I had 2 green and 3 blue.
Okay. I don't know where I got red from. But I remember you had activator.
It's an influencing theme, not a executing theme. And Josh talked to me about this because when he told me I had activator, I was like, I don't feel like I have activator. And he was like, well, actually, you're good at helping other people like figure out what needs to be done. Yeah. And maybe not so much for yourself.
That's hilarious.
So I was like, okay, so that's why it's not the executing theme. It's like the, here's what we should do, everyone. Right.
Let's
exactly. Yeah.
Well,
anyway.
Yeah. For someone who's able to execute or activate.
Sure.
I think that learning how to empathize with one another can save people from, you know, letting things fester. You know, especially for people who might tend to be more passive aggressive, or they won't speak out when they're hurt. You know, they'll bury things.
And that can come from so many places. It's like you're bringing a whole just carload of baggage with you into work that you're not even thinking about. And I love the idea of training through this. I feel like this is what I miss about having somebody like Josh at a workplace who paid attention to this stuff and got us to pay attention to it, because it's not something that you're going to think about devoting time to unless somebody is there saying, we have to stop and we have to think about this stuff. Because in your situation that you just described, you know, where Michael and I are obviously like, no, you didn't do anything wrong there. It seems like you and this other person were just at different levels of emotional awareness in that situation. And if, say, that person got any kind of training through like, hey, here's why we don't immediately just dump all of our stuff on somebody when they get to work. That would have been amazing.
And that comes with the level of a relationship that I had with this person.
Right.
You know, with not that we didn't have rapport, we did, but our relationship wasn't deep enough for me to be able to go into her office and be like, why are you crying?
Right.
Okay. But that's not how I meant it. You know, like there's empathy is still important.
Yes.
But, you know, once you get to know someone and like they understand that even in your rebuttal or your conversation with them, it's not an attack.
Right.
You know, but that's because that person knows that you love them.
That's
and that they're safe.
That's right.
This person, we didn't have that relationship.
Gotcha.
And it needed to be handled almost kind of with kids' gloves. We needed to like gently sift through what was going on with empathy. And I've been there too, where I misread what someone meant
It's easy to do.
Maybe like I look across the room and they're just like scowling at me. I'm like, oh my God, why are they looking at me?
They have gas.
They must.
It's Michael. He has gas.
They hate me, and like what did I do to make them upset with me? And then I find out later that their contact was messing up.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And so
Did Brett had gas?
No, it's you. It's Michael Blum.
Oh,
Because you had too much ice cream for
I had
lunch.
too much ice cream and a burger and pasta salad
all those things
And a
happened.
beer. Yeah.
And a beer.
Did we say beer?
Yeah. Yep. All that happened. And 2 garlic knots.
Oh my gosh.
It's the lunch of champions.
We're devolving into the thing I was so scared we would devolve into.
Also, did you notice that she dragged us down that road? I was just sitting here peacefully.
Listen, you did so good. I actually brought up the gas.
That's what I'm saying.
Oh, yeah.
You
It was
dragged us
definitely
down
me.
that road.
It was definitely me.
I wasn't doing it.
I was throwing a bone there for you, Blum.
Thanks.
Well, it's so funny. We're kind of like, we brought it around to empathy, which was our topic last week. Did you listen to Jonathan's episode?
I did.
Isn't he great?
Yeah, he's the bomb.com. He's
bomb.com.
He's basically my brother. Don't Google bomb.com. It's not what you think.
That's not Jonathan's website.
No,
don't go there.
Don't do that. But I will plug him. 864 Explorer. He didn't do that, but
Well,
he held out on us.
He wasn't willing to plug anything last time.
He didn't want to plug anything.
he hasn't launched it yet.
But he will.
He will.
We're all over it. We'll be the first fans.
But honestly, empathy imbues everything.
Yeah.
And it impacts everything that we do. It's how we treat the homeless person that we pass on the street, or the person who is incarcerated in prison and rotting away. It's how we treat our neighbor who lets their dog poop in our yard all the time. It's how we treat ourselves, and I think that there is a sense of humility and not humiliation. I need to say it because I know that people have different definitions.
Yes,
humility is not a bad thing.
No, it's a very good thing.
But empathy has an essence of humility with it, and that you're coming in willing to love rather than to be right. And it's more important to love than it is to be right. Because you can be, we see it on Facebook all the time. People are having political arguments left and right, and nobody is changing anybody's mind. They just want to be right. It's more important to love than it is to be right. Yeah. You're not going to change someone's mind. In fact, you might just make them more angry.
Right.
And push them away a little
further.
Bit more. I'm not saying that you don't have discourse and discuss things.
Right.
But coming in from that place of humility and even being willing to be wrong. Like maybe you messed up. And be willing to say, I'm sorry.
And to me, if you really wanted to change somebody's mind, it would have to come from a place of love.
Absolutely.
Right?
There has to be trust there.
Or else you're being attacked, right?
Absolutely.
So if somebody you really loved came to you and said, like, Diddy Bread, you're being an you'd be like, oh boy, I got to get my stuff together. Because I know this person is not out to get me or is looking to insult me. Like, they're trying to get me to get myself together here. Whereas if somebody you don't know comes to you and says, like, Diddy Bread, you're being a real
you're like,
all right, get away from me.
That's right.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So, like, any real discussion of anything really has to be surrounded by this love.
Yeah. And even if it's the person you love most in the world, it's very hard for us to do this. If you go with your spouse to couples therapy, it takes weeks, maybe months to get to the point where you feel safe, even in that environment. It's telling your partner that you spend all this time with, like, hey, I have this issue with something that you're doing. So I guess some people do that easily, but it's very, very hard. It's hard to hear. It's hard to say. Like, it's,
And if it's not hard to say, you're an attacker.
Right.
Because if you're like, oh, all right, well, here's my
list.
Here's my spouse. Here's my grievances with you today.
Right.
Like, you're not, you know what I mean? You're not doing the requisite amount of giving love that would need to cushion all of your list of grievances with your spouse, right? This is like too much.
Right.
And therein lies the importance of knowing one another.
Yes.
One knowing yourself,
yes,
personality, but also knowing one another, whether it's in a marriage or a friendship or working. Like,
yes,
I know that this person's personality is such that I can just shoot straight with them.
That's
They
right.
prefer that I just don't beat around the bush.
That's
and
right.
I shoot straight.
Right, yeah.
And this is how. And Candace, I know that she's a little bit more sensitive, so we're going to speak peaceably and very gently, and we're going to talk about the hard things, but we're not going to come in guns blazing. You know, and really studying people and getting to know them. You can call it their love languages, their personality types,
sure,
how they are able to receive correction, instruction, feedback, criticism.
Right. And like, how has my relationship been with that person over the last 6 months?
Right.
If I had a big fight with somebody 4 months ago, I'm not, you know what I mean? I'm be very sensitive not to offer correction to that person.
Right. Don't poke the bear.
Right.
Somebody refers to this as making deposits and withdrawals, and I forget who it is, but you can't do a bunch of withdrawals unless you're making some deposits along the way.
The ratio has to be way in favor of deposits.
Deposits, right, exactly.
It probably has to be like seriously 35-1.
And don't make deposits just so you can do the withdrawals. That's not what a relationship is, right? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And in coming back to, your first question about like working together as a team, being a good team player, I think that's part of it.
Yeah.
You're making a lot of deposits.
That's right.
And for it to be a very healthy team, for the culture to be strong, robust, everybody's doing that.
That's right.
They're putting in a lot of deposits.
Yeah.
And it goes back to what you said about the leadership and how they are leading by example. I feel like you can develop a culture where it is like the norm for everyone to be making deposits. But if they don't see that coming from the top level, it's going to be hard, because then it just falls on people who are kind of naturally good at that. And they don't have enough sway to make that the norm, so it has to come from the top.
And also, they're out making deposits. Meanwhile, nobody's making deposits for them.
Exactly. And you're going to get burnt out.
It's like, I'm out making a bunch of deposits and everybody's withdrawing for me.
That's right.
And, the equation, your checkbook's not balanced.
Exactly. And that's when people leave.
Right. And I'll say, for the leaders that aren't making deposits, I'll say that the staff's not making deposits back into them either.
Right.
And they need it too.
They do.
Sure.
Leadership does too.
Because especially when you've been hurt or wronged, that's the last thing you want to do.
Right.
Especially if it's hurt your ego.
Right.
I don't want to say something kind to them. In fact, I want to avoid them in the hallway.
Right.
If I don't have to say anything to them, I won't. And you know what? There's some days where maybe you just need to steer clear because your mouth is going to get you in trouble.
That's true. Simmer down.
That's down. Right. but it's reciprocal.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, final thoughts?
Yeah. Can I make a plug for this? Because as the good listeners will remember, this came up many moons ago when we tried to talk about me turning 40.
Yes.
Do you remember this?
I remember our 40 discussion.
First, we tried to do an episode and I chickened out.
Oh, because you were worried you hadn't accomplished enough?
Right.
Yes.
How did I eventually get over this?
You were talking about killing your ego.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. So this came up like, I don't know, I'm 41 and a third. So this came up like 2 years ago, essentially.
Yes.
On the show. So I've been on a journey with this. So I want to report back to the listeners that I want to give them the results of my journey thus far.
Yeah.
And the handy dandy guide of how to do it.
This is great. Yeah. Right? Let's follow up.
All right. So it's been great.
Killing your ego has been great.
Killing my ego has been great.
What does that look like for you?
What does it look like for me?
Yeah. How do you kill your ego?
I just think less about myself.
Okay. So when you find yourself thinking about yourself, what do you do?
I go, here's the handy dandy guide.
Yeah.
I have a thought.
Yeah.
I say, who is the subject of this thought?
Okay.
And so, like, if my thought is, boy, I really don't want to do this task.
Yeah.
The subject of the thought is me.
Sure.
And now we're into ego.
Okay.
Now I stop and I think, okay, what is the real problem here?
Uh-huh.
Is it just that I don't want to do the task and I'm being lazy or something?
Sure.
But either way, let's just say my choices are I'm being lazy or I think this task is beneath me. Either way, the subject is still me.
Sure.
And I am not focused on the task. So it's actually really easy to figure out.
Okay.
And then often I'll just say, like, I know you don't really want to do this, but it's not really that big of a deal. Like,
of course not.
It's not going to kill you. And then sometimes I'll be like, I don't feel good because I'm hungry. And I go like, all right, that's not really an ego problem. I am thinking about myself here, but this
physical needs.
Yeah, this seems actually
basic Maslow's hierarchy.
Yeah, this seems like pretty reasonable. Like,
sure.
And what I should do is then go get a granola bar. You know,
sure.
like,
yes. And leave the crumbs on the floor.
Yeah. Then I should ruin Candace's office.
Wrapper on your desk.
Yes. But it actually makes your life better, right? Because you spend less time thinking about yourself, and the more you pour into other people, there's two things: the better they feel, right? And actually, the better you feel.
Sure.
Yeah.
Right. So it sounds very selfless to be like, I'm really into serving other people, but at the same time you get like a little boost from it as well. So
it does good for you.
Selfless.
I think you're right. I've always kind of made the joke that like there's really no such thing as altruism, because there's some self-serving purpose to every good thing that you can do, which is fine. It's totally fine. I would say, and this kind of goes back to something we were talking about earlier, like find the balance in that, because you can't always be serving other people. You've got to also take care of yourself, right?
There are some other ways to try to get yourself out of those mindsets too. A friend of mine, we would start texting each other things we were thankful for the day.
Oh, that's so cool.
That's a great example.
That's really easy.
So we'd like list 10 things. I'm thankful for this amazing cup of tea I'm drinking right now.
Yes.
I'm thankful that I have an apartment downtown. Like just, and it doesn't have to be something big. Like I'm thankful to be alive. And like, okay, everybody is.
Right. That's a given. You know, the little things.
Just the
You're
little
right.
things.
I think that's an ego killer too. I think gratitude is one of the ways you can take the focus off of you. Yeah, for sure. So your journey in your 40th year, and we're actually in our 41st year now.
It's going great, and I feel much lighter.
Lighter.
That's awesome.
Like emotionally lighter.
Yeah. I don't walk around nearly as bogged down because I don't spend nearly as much time thinking about myself.
That's awesome, Michael.
So it's great.
Congrats, man.
I would recommend everybody do this. Just try it for like 2 days and see if you feel any better.
So evaluate your thoughts. If your main focus is you, try to reroute it.
Right.
Unless it's a basic need.
Right.
And then you should just meet it and move on.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense. What are your thoughts, Candace?
I agree with this.
Okay.
Yeah. Whenever we are becoming enslaved to our ego, things get out of whack. And whatever side of the pendulum you're on.
Yes.
And so when we're able to bring things to center, whether that's through service or thankfulness or what have you, there's a myriad of ways that we can get ourselves out of our own
Meditation,
heads.
our first episode. Absolutely.
Exercise,
Dude.
Yeah.
That's so huge.
Yeah.
Speaking from someone who rarely ever does it. And then when I do, I'm just like, why don't I do this all the time? I feel so much better.
Sounds better.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, but finding those ways that work for you to get yourself centered again. And I mean, you really can feel a lot lighter. Because I would say the same happened for me as well. I needed a lot of assistance with this, and I had it through counseling because I was so in the weeds with the low self-esteem side of the pendulum that I needed help. And so I was able to get that through counseling and get myself centered again. But I feel leaps and bounds lighter. I mean, for people who know me and have known me for the past, 5 or so years, they'll say that I'm a different person than I was a year ago. And I agree.
Yeah.
And I
can see that.
I feel lighter. I feel more peaceful. I feel happier. I'm less afraid. And a lot of it has to do with me not living in my head about me all the time.
This good stuff, you guys. Really good stuff.
I think that's a great place to wrap it up.
I agree. Candace, thanks so much for being here. You're amazing.
Well, I know you have some stuff you want to plug.
Plug your stuff, girl. We've plugged you on this podcast before.
We want to plug again.
Yes.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yes.
Yeah, I am also a musician. I released a song earlier this year called Come Clean. It is on all streaming platforms. Listen to it. You don't have to like it or download it, but it's there.
I'm telling you, you do have to like it.
How
or
about
download
like it and buy it?
That's right.
Stop being so cheap.
You can buy it. That's no problem. But yeah, I'm hoping to have a full album recorded by the end of the year. So working on writing the music for that right now.
So great.
So stay tuned.
Godspeed to that.
I'll be on a song.
You will? Are you going to?
That was you asking me.
Are you going to spit some bars?
Gonna drop some verse.
I got 16 for you.
Maybe you could do that Kanye song you couldn't remember earlier.
I could do that one about my ego.
Okay, cool.
Yes, I find lyrics for that.
All right. Well, find Candace Morris.
Candace doesn't really want me to do that.
Okay, fine. No problem.
All right.
I do. I think you should cut your own album.
There it is.
Yeah.
Ooh.
But find Candace Morris on your streaming service and get her song Come Clean, and look out for her new album, which could drop anytime, you guys.
That's right. Coming in the near future.
That's right.
And social media sites they can follow you?
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram, Candace Morris Music. Same thing on Facebook. I have a website, CandaceMorrisMusic.com. I'm on the Twitters, trying to be better about using that platform. So find me on all the social medias.
Yay.
I'm on the TikTok too, or as I like to call it, the Tic Tac, to annoy the youths. But you can
call it Ticulus Toculus.
There you go. Jerry. You can find me on the Ticulus Toculus as well.
Candace makes some pretty good TikToks. Michael Blum, plug our stuff.
We have all the social media. Splain_yourself.
Yes.
But there's one special one.
Yes.
Yes. This is the last time I'm doing this because it's woefully ineffective.
No, you're getting us more followers by the minute.
I know, but they never tweet me.
Yeah, come on. Why aren't you guys tweeting Blum? Let's go.
Ace, every week I come on here and I say, if you'd like to have a brush with fame, the muscle hamster will talk to you on Twitter. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that should make your day better, right? Because you talk to a famous person.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I literally haven't received one tweet.
Oh, man. I'm so sorry. I think maybe you should do like a hashtag trend, this week on Splain Yourself. Give us some ideas. Hashtag.
Tweet the muscle hamster?
You could also do polls, and surveys are getting more popular on the Twitters. You can send out a survey.
I don't want a survey. I want them to have the thrill of speaking to me.
Okay, so you're not going to go to them. You want them to come to you.
I'm famous. I'm the muscle hamster.
You want them to work for it. They have to work for your affection.
Well, they just have to tweet me.
Maybe they're too nervous right now. It's like they're too intimidated.
Yeah, they're intimidated by your greatness.
But I always write back politely.
You do, yes.
And I'll talk to you about whatever you want to talk about until I lose interest in it, which could be one tweet or it could be 4,000.
Oh, my gosh.
It's hard to say.
Yeah, it just depends on how interesting you are.
All right, well, you heard the man. Get on Twitter.
Yeah.
Talk to Michael.
Splain_yourself. I'll write back to you politely.
That's right. Okay. Well, what's our final thought?
As the philosopher Q-Tip once said, don't ever waste no time with no played out ego. And always be ready
to splain yourself. Woo!